Mr. Speaker.
Barbara Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of New Zealand First, I rise to speak to the budget policy statement. Mr. Speaker, no one can believe this budget policy statement. Remember the budget last year, 170,000 new jobs in 4 years? What a con! This budget's not about creating wealth for New Zealanders. It's not even about new jobs or trading our way into a better future. In reality, this budget is about the market. Overseas banks, currency traders, speculators, financiers and Nationals' rich mates buying up our assets. Insanity, Mr. Speaker, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a totally different result. This government is doing exactly the same as it did over 20 years ago, the same recipe. What a mess. This government is driven by ideology and stupidity masquerading as competence. It worships the market, whatever that is. Yet it's the same financial market that caused all the problems in the first place. The Prime Minister knows this. He was very close to the people who helped manufacture this crisis by their shonky financial dealings in the United States. There are some people, shonky, yes, and it is. There are some people who think it belongs to them and they have the divine right to get obscenely rich at the expense of everyone else. Almost anyone with some knowledge of economics knows that when governments cut spending during a recession, they reduce economic activity, and that makes things much, much worse. It happened in the 30s last century with devastating consequences. It was only relieved in New Zealand when one courageous politician and some smart advisors devalued the currency. They knew New Zealand only had one opportunity to export its way out of trouble. That was our last chance, and it worked. The only way that we will ever restore our country to its rightful place as God's own will be to rebalance the economy through smart exporting. That means that the government has to help exporters, not the speculators and the foreign banks. The IMF says that the New Zealand dollar is up to 20% overvalued. Even the governor of the Reserve Bank, who is besotted with inflation, says the high dollar is getting in the way of our recovery. Can none of these people actually see that they're actually making things much worse? And what about National's commitment to senior citizens? We know, as Nick Smith said, that power prices are soaring in the lead up to the privatisation of our rivers and our dams. Domestic consumers are getting flogged with high power prices and are actually subsidising the commercial and the industrial users. New Zealand First asked the government for a small discount for senior citizens. We did all of the research, we did the costing, and we even prepared the legislation. Yet, not one cabinet minister would talk to us, neither would the Prime Minister. Didn't want to know. I know that the previous speaker may be interested, and so might Mr Hayes. We hope so. This is basically not good enough. The government can't treat these people who've made a contribution and paid for all these state assets that our government is now pimping right around the world. Sell it once, it's gone. This is not a government of the many, it's a government of the greedy few, and they are intent on selling the rest of us down the river. The budget policy statement actually reinforces that. In 2008, John Key promised the country a brighter future, but the reality is that things aren't getting any better. In fact, they've gotten worse. The economy grew by a measly 0.3% in the last quarter. We've got tens of thousands of young people out of work. We've got 83,000 young people who are actually unemployed. We've got more than 23,000 Kiwi kids who are living below the poverty line. Not a good statistic. And in the meantime, the current account deficit has worsened on National's watch. Foreign debt is soaring, and thanks to an overinflated dollar, our export industry is being crippled. And what the Finance Minister hasn't told you is that the provisional tax take is way, way down. It works like this. People who pay a high level of provisional tax are finding out that their incomes are actually dropping. So instead of paying more provisional tax, they're actually claiming refunds. That's not the way it should be. The very idea that the government's books are going to be balanced in 2014-15 is a pipe dream. And even in this policy statement, it says that it will be a stretch. But despite all of this, the government shouldn't be fixated on balancing the books. It should be fixated on stimulating the economy, creating jobs, and giving exporters a really good base to launch from. New Zealand isn't the basket case of Europe. We have resources, we have skills, and basically we are a very resourceful people. We can trade our way out of this mess if we reward the people instead of punishing them all the time. Governments are actually supposed to be for people. There's great concern about child poverty in New Zealand, and how does this government respond? It holds an inquiry. Everybody knows that child poverty is family poverty, and family poverty is actually caused by unemployment. And unemployment is the greatest evil that's actually facing New Zealand. And it's time that National actually did something about it. We're exporting more and more young people, more and more of our citizens, and we educate them. We ensure that they have free health care up to the age of 6. We look after them in every way we can, and then we export them when they can actually put something back into the economy. Now, to my way of thinking, that's not smart economic management in any way. We have the people in this country who built up this great country. They would actually be horrified to know that their descendants are flogging off the assets built up by generations of hard-working people. They were always very wary of slick salesmen, and never did they ever contemplate the thought that the country would actually be run by these people. We in New Zealand First say to the Prime Minister that he should admit his mistakes and start running the country for everybody, not the privileged few. We want economic growth, we want jobs, we want an export-led economic plan to make this great country the country that it once was. Thank you.
I call the Honourable Member John Hayes.